The alien junkyard was silent, too silent. Broken metal arms, old ship wings, shattered robot parts, and rusted panels lay in piles under the dull red sky. The wind moved like a whisper between the heaps, carrying the smell of oil and decay. Man walked alone, his boots crunching softly on broken glass and metal screws. His name was Raiden, a human scavenger. He came to this ruined world looking for old tech, spare engines, or anything he could sell. Most of this trash was useless, but sometimes he found things worth credits. Raiden's eyes were sharp, trained to notice the smallest movements, but today he saw nothing. And then he heard something, a weak sound, soft, like someone breathing. Raiden stopped. He turned his head, listening. The sound was coming from behind a large pile of shredded hovercrafts. He moved closer, slowly, hand near his blaster. Another breath. Quieter now. Almost like a whisper from the dead. He climbed over a crushed pod, careful not to make too much noise. As he reached the other side, his eyes widened. There, buried under wires, cloth, and scraps of metal, was a body. It wasn't human. It was an alien female, tall and slender. Her skin was pale blue, covered in cuts and dirt. Her hair was tangled, and parts of her armor were broken off. Her legs were bent at strange angles, clearly crushed. Raiden dropped to his knees beside her. Her chest rose and fell weakly. She was still alive. He carefully brushed the junk off her face. Her eyes opened, just a little. They were bright silver. Please, she whispered. Her voice was dry, broken. Don't leave me. Raiden looked around, confused and angry. Who would leave someone like this? Then he saw it. A tag hanging around her neck. It had a strange alien symbol, and below it, written in trade language, unusable, discarded. His jaw tightened. She had been thrown away like trash. What kind of monsters do this to their own? He muttered. She coughed, trembling. My family said I was no longer useful. Raiden reached into his pack and pulled out a water bottle. He held it to her lips. She drank slowly, her hands too weak to hold it. Why are you helping me? She asked, her voice shaking. You're human. Because you're alive, he said simply. And I don't leave people to die. Suddenly, a sharp beeping sound echoed from behind them. Raiden spun around. 3 small drones were hovering in the air. Junkyard security. Unauthorized life form. Detected, one said in a robotic voice. Trash must be disposed. Raiden's eyes narrowed. He knew what came next. He grabbed the alien woman and pulled her up gently, though she could not move. He placed her on a hover sled he had brought in earlier. Hold on, he said. We're getting out of here. Can't move, she whispered. I'll move for both of us. He jumped on the sled and activated the engine. It sputtered, coughed, then floated shakily. The drones began flashing red. Disposal in progress, one of them said. Aiming a stun beam, Raiden pushed the throttle forward. The sled jerked, then rushed through the junkyard paths. The drones followed, firing short bursts of light. One blast hit near Raiden's foot. Another grazed the sled's edge, sending sparks flying. Raiden dodged between scrap piles, his eyes locked ahead. The sled rocked violently, but he didn't stop. He glanced back. The alien woman had passed out. Stay with me, he said through gritted teeth. Don't you give up now. He reached a hidden cave at the edge of the junkyard. The sled slid inside, out of drone range. The machine scanned the area, then turned away. Disappearing back into the yard, Raiden shut off the engine. Inside the small cave was his camp, a basic tent. Old blankets, tools, and some food. He gently laid the alien woman down and checked her pulse. Still weak, but steady, Raiden sat beside her thinking. He didn't even know her name. He didn't know why her own kind left her to rot like broken metal. But something in her eyes, even for that short moment, had screamed, "Help me." and he had answered in the junkyard full of useless things. He had found something valuable, someone worth saving. As he looked at her broken body, he knew this was only the beginning. A soft groan broke the silence. Zarina opened her eyes. Above her was a rocky ceiling. A dull yellow light glowed near the wall. Warmth touched her skin. Soft cloth was under her back. She was no longer in the junkyard, but pain shot through her legs like fire. She tried to move, nothing. Her body didn't obey her. Then a shadow moved. She flinched. The human, the same one who pulled her from the trash, was there, kneeling near a fire, heating some food. He heard her groan and turned quickly. "You're awake," he said, walking over. Zarina's voice was cracked. "Where am I?" "Safe," he replied. "Hidden cave. I bring supplies here sometimes when I scavenge." She blinked slowly. "You saved me." "Why?" Raiden sat beside her. "You were alive." "That's enough reason." Zarina stared at him, confused. "My people don't think that way. If you are broken, you are trash. No one wastes energy on trash. Well, I'm not your people." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry cough. He helped her drink water. She drank slowly, watching his face the entire time. "No one has ever helped me without asking for something," she whispered. "You're strange, human." "I've been called worse," he said with a small grin. Raiden checked her wounds again. The damage was worse than he thought. Her legs were shattered, and her spine was partially severed. Alien tech braces were wrapped around her lower back, but they were dead, no power left. Zarina noticed his hands on the brace. "Don't waste your time," she muttered. "It's useless. I can't walk. I can't even crawl." Raiden didn't stop. "This brace is old, but fixable. I've seen worse in war." "You were a soldier?" "I was a field medic. I patched up people under fire, sometimes with nothing but duct tape and a needle." Zarina was silent for a moment. "Why did you stop?" Raiden paused. "The fire crackled. Because I failed. Once, I couldn't save someone who needed me. I promised I'd never let that happen again." He stood up and began digging through a small box of scrap tech, wires, chips, old connectors. He found what he needed, a mini power cell. "If I can get this brace working," he said, "you might move your upper body, maybe more." Zarina looked away. "You don't understand, even if I walk again, I have nowhere to go. My family threw me away like junk. My kind values strength, speed, perfection, and none of that now." Raiden connected the power cell, sparks flying for a second. "Then maybe it's time you stop living by their rules." She watched him in silence as he worked. Suddenly, a loud click echoed through the cave. Zarina's body jolted slightly as the brace powered up. Her back arched, then relaxed. She screamed, but not from pain, from shock. She moved her left arm. Just a little, but it moved. Her eyes widened. "You did it. I told you it's fixable." Tears filled her silver eyes. Not from pain, not from weakness, from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But their moment didn't. Last. An alarm beeped on Raiden's scanner. He picked it up and frowned. "What is it?" Zarina asked. "We've got company." He rushed outside the cave and looked toward the junkyard. Flashing red lights, drones flying in the distance. But this time, not just junkyard bots. It was something bigger. A craft was hovering above the junk piles. A sleek alien design. "Zarina," he called, coming back inside. "Does your family use scout ships?" She froze. "That's their symbol." "They've come back?" "No," she whispered. "They're not here to rescue me." Raiden narrowed his eyes. "Then what?" "To make sure I'm really dead." The firelight flickered across her face as she whispered the words. "They came to finish me." Raiden didn't move. His hand tightened around his scanner. Outside the cave, alien lights circled above the junkyard like hungry vultures. Zarina's Silver eyes locked onto his. "My family follows a rule," she said quietly. "We don't leave shame alive. A crippled daughter is shame." Raiden's jaw clenched. "So they left you to die. And now they're back to make sure you did?" She nodded slowly. He looked down at the weak pulse on her neck. The power brace he repaired had given her slight movement, but she was still fragile. Too fragile to run. Too fragile to fight. "Then they picked the wrong day to check," he said. "Because you're not dying here." Outside, the alien ship hovered lower. Long legs extended beneath it, planting themselves on the metal ground. The engines hummed like a beast holding its breath. Two figures stepped out tall, armored, moving with smooth, trained precision. Zarina closed her eyes. "That's my brother. The other is my cousin, both soldiers. They won't leave until they see my corpse." Raiden stood, grabbed his blaster, and walked to the entrance of the cave. He didn't say a word for a moment. Then, without looking, "Back," he said. "Then we show them something they didn't expect." Back in the cave, Zarina tried to lift her arm again. It trembled, but it moved farther than before. She stared at her fingers. Just days ago, they were useless. Now, they answered her. Her thoughts raced. Why is this human risking himself? Why didn't he just take what he wanted and leave? That's what everyone else does. Her chest ached not from the brace, but from something unfamiliar. She wanted to love. Not just breathe. Not just survive. Live. Because someone believed she wasn't trash. Raiden climbed the scrap hill near the cave entrance, covered in dust and old armor. He watched the alien soldiers searching the yard below. He aimed his blaster at a fuel pipe nearby and fired. Boom! A small explosion erupted, smoke flying everywhere. The soldiers turned, drawing weapons, shouting in their language. Raiden used the smoke to move fast. He dropped down behind a cargo pile, moving toward the back of the ship. His target wasn't the soldiers. It was the ship's core beacon. If he destroyed it, they couldn't leave. "If they came to kill," he muttered, "then they don't deserve a ride home." Back in the cave, Zarina heard the explosion. Her heart raced. She pushed herself up with her elbow, teeth gritted. She dragged her body toward Raiden's toolbox. Inch by inch, pain lit her spine on fire. But she kept going. She found a communicator inside and switched it on. "Raiden," she whispered, "tell me you're still alive." Raiden was under the ship, attaching a thermal charge to the beacon. His earpiece crackled. "Still breathing," he said. "Might be in trouble soon." Zarina's voice came weak but fierce. "They never expected me to rise. Show them they were wrong." Raiden smiled. "That's the plan." He activated the timer. 30 seconds. Then he ran. The explosion was small but perfect. The ship's beacon cracked, short-circuited, and sparked violently. The soldiers screamed as red alerts flashed across their armor displays. One of them began retreating toward the ship. The other scanned wildly, searching for the attacker. Raiden ducked behind a broken turret. The soldier spotted him. A blast flew over his head. He didn't fire back. Instead, he raised a hand and pointed behind the soldier. The man turned and froze. Zire. She was crawling, barely upright, using the rocky wall for support. Her body shaking, but her eyes filled with fury. "You came to bury me," she growled. "But I already rose." Her cousin hesitated. "Zarina, you should be dead." "Disappointed? You're broken." "No," she said, dragging herself another inch forward. "I'm healing." "And she nodded toward Raiden. "He saw more in me than you ever did." Raiden fired a stun bolt into the cousin's back. He collapsed instantly. The brother took one look and turned to flee, but the ship was already useless. Raiden approached Zarina and gently caught her as she collapsed. She looked up at him, smiling through the pain. "I've never felt stronger," she whispered. It started with a hum, low, steady, growing louder beneath the ground. Raiden paused, lifting his head. Zarena lay beside him, breathing hard after standing up to her family. Her cousin was stunned. Her brother had vanished into the smoke. But that hum. It wasn't coming from the ship. It was coming from beneath the junkyard. Zarena's eyes snapped open. No, they activated the Gravguard. What's that? Raiden asked, blaster raised. A defense system built into the scrap, she said with fear in her voice. Old machines buried, sleeping, programmed to destroy anything that moves. Raiden looked around. The ground began to shake. Great, he muttered. A grave full of angry robots. From under the piles of rust and wreckage, arms began rising, twisted claws, blades, broken limbs with glowing red eyes. One by one, the Gravguard awakened. They weren't fast, but they were many. Metal scraped on metal as they climbed out of their graves like monsters from old Earth legends. Zarena's cousin, still half-conscious, screamed as one dragged him into the darkness. Raiden fired into the junk, but the bolts barely slowed the machines. These weren't just drones. They were ancient warbots, forgotten and mad. He grabbed Zarena and pulled her back into the cave. We can't stay here, he said. This cave's not strong enough to hold them off. I know a place, Zarena whispered. But we'll need to go deep past the grinder zone. Raiden frowned. That area eats machines for breakfast. Exactly, she said. The Gravguard can't follow us there. Raiden didn't hesitate. He picked her up, placed her gently on the hover sled, and powered it on. Sparks flickered from the damaged battery, but it still floated. Outside, the junkyard was now alive with death. Glowing red eyes blinked through smoke. Mechanical feet crushed scrap metal with every step. Raiden steered the sled hard to the left, avoiding a swinging blade arm. One bot tried to grab them, but Zarena grabbed a metal rod and jammed it into the bot's face. The bot sparked, glitched, and fell over. Raiden glanced at her. You've got good aim for someone who can't walk. I was a warrior once, she said, voice calm. Not trash. The grinder zone was close. Raiden saw the huge broken sign above it. Danger, auto processors active, beyond the gate. Large machines turned and groaned, still moving after years. Sharp rolling teeth, conveyor belts, and massive grinders kept chewing through metal nonstop. No bot makes it through that alive, Zarena said. But if we stay low and move fast, we might. Raiden steered the sled into the zone. Instantly, the noise changed. It was louder, constant, hungry. Massive gears turned beside them. A falling panel nearly crushed the sled. Heat blasted from open furnaces. The sled wobbled from power loss. Raiden grit his teeth. Come on, stay with me. One of the Gravguard bots followed them in. It was fast and smarter than the others. Raiden couldn't outpace it. It jumped onto the sled. Zarena shouted, "Duck!" Raiden dropped just in time as a saw blade arm flew overhead. Zarena reached up with all her strength and grabbed a loose chain above. She swung it hard across the bot's face. The bot turned toward her, but its claw caught in the spinning grinder beside them. Crunch! The bot was shredded instantly. Zarena stared in shock. Raiden smiled. You're not just a warrior. You're dangerous. They reached a quiet zone behind the grinders, an old processing room, half buried in rock. Raiden shut off the sled and collapsed beside it. Smoke, grease, and tension filled the air. Zarena touched his hand. Why are you doing this for me, Raiden? He looked at her, exhausted but honest. Because the world gave up on you. I don't do that, she blinked. You don't even know me. I don't need to, he said. You're alive. That's all that matters. For a moment, they just sat there, two broken survivors in a world of machines and death. But far in the distance, deeper in the shadows, something else stirred. It had no face, only spinning teeth. Deep within the grinder zone, a machine older than war woke up. It didn't walk. It crawled, huge wheels grinding metal beneath it as it hunted by heat. movement, and fear. Its only purpose, consume everything. And now, it had found something warm. Raydn adjusted the broken power cables on the hover sled. Sparks flew, and the weak battery gave off smoke. Zarena watched him, her breathing still rough. Her back brace buzzed slightly. It was barely holding together. "Can we move?" she asked. Raydn shook his head. "The sled's dying. I need a better power source." He looked around. They were inside a half-buried control station behind the grinder zone. Old wires hung from the ceiling. Screens were broken. Metal walls groaned with age. "We're sitting ducks here," he muttered. And then they heard it. A roar of grinding steel, slow. Steady, coming closer. Zarena froze. "Raydn, that sound." "I know it." He raised his blaster. "Tell me it's not what I think." "It's the Devourer," she whispered. "Built to eat battle machines during the Great War. It doesn't stop. It doesn't sleep. It just grinds." Raydn's jaw tightened. "Let me guess, it never cared who was machine or who was person." She nodded. Suddenly, the lights inside the station blinked once. Then again, a warning from a dying system. Something is near. Raydn moved fast. He tore open a panel near the floor and found an old fusion cell, dusty, but intact. "If this works," he said, "it'll power the sled long enough to get us out." Zarena pushed herself up with her elbow. "Do it fast." Raydn plugged it in. The sled beeped once, twice, then hummed to life. The lights flared bright, too bright. Devourer's sensors picked it up instantly. It roared louder. Zarena's voice cracked. "Raydn, it's coming." Through the rusted wall, they heard it approaching. Not walking. Grinding. It crushed junk, tore down pipes, and chewed through steel beams as if they were paper. Raydn loaded Zarena onto the sled. She gripped the side tightly. "Hold on," he said, jumping on and grabbing the controls. "We're flying blind now." The Devourer smashed through the far wall behind them. It was massive, like a crawling mountain of blades, spinning teeth, and drills. Raydn hit the throttle. The sled launched into the dark tunnels beyond. Flames burst from the back as they sped through narrow, rust-filled corridors. The Devourer chased them, slow, but never stopping. Sparks flew as its spinning blades cut through the walls, always behind them, always gaining. The tunnels twisted. One collapsed. Raydn ducked just in time. The sled jolted. Zarena screamed as her brace sparked again. Pain shot through her spine. "I'm sorry," Raydn said, voice shaking. "Just a little more." They burst through a final gate and into an open chamber, quiet, still, and full of old scrap ships. They had made it to the scrapper's grave, where ships too broken for war were thrown away. But behind them, the Devourer wasn't stopping. Raydn spotted a half-crushed starship nearby. Its fuel core was intact. He slid the sled behind it and jumped off. "What are you doing?" Zarena called. "Ending this," he said. He sprinted to the fuel core, opened the emergency panel, and set it to overload. The countdown began. 10 seconds. He ran back, dove onto the sled, and grabbed the throttle. The Devourer burst into the chamber. It lunged toward them, grinding everything in its path. 3, 2, 1, boom! A wall of fire exploded behind them. The Devourer was caught in the blast. Its gears screamed, and then silence. Raydn and Zarena flew out the side tunnel as the chamber collapsed behind them. Minutes later, they stopped. Both were quiet, covered in dust. Breathing hard, Zarena looked at him, tears in her eyes. "You could have left me behind." Raydn didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, "You were the only real thing in that junkyard." Zarena smiled weakly. "Then maybe I'm not trash after all." He looked into her silver eyes and said, "No, you're a survivor." Her fingers wouldn't stop shaking. But for the first time, they were shaking because they could move. Zarena stared at her hand as if it belonged to someone else. Weak, trembling but alive, she clenched it slowly, then unclenched. then did it again. Raiden sat across from her, patching a burn on his arm. The explosion that killed the Devourer had nearly taken them both. But they were still breathing, and Zarena was still healing. "You okay?" he asked, glancing up. She didn't answer right away. Finally she whispered, "I used to believe I was dead. Even before they dumped me in the junkyard." Raiden frowned. "Why?" She looked at him, her silver eyes calm but tired. "Because I thought no one would ever look at me again and see a person." Raiden didn't speak for a moment. Then he smiled. "I don't just see a person. I see someone who spit in death's face." Zarena let out a small laugh. "That's a very human thing to say," he shrugged. "That's how we're built. Stubborn, loud, and too dumb to quit." She looked down at her hand again, then at her legs still lifeless. "Do you think I'll walk again?" Raiden stood and picked up a glowing data tablet. "Not only walk," he said. "I think you'll fly." Inside the hollow chamber of the crashed ship, Raiden had found something priceless, a med bay core, human tech, old but functional. "If we connect this to your spinal brace, we can repair the nerve links," he explained. "It'll hurt. It might not work fully, but there's a chance." Zarena didn't hesitate. "Do it," Raiden raised an eyebrow. "Even if it burns?" "I've felt worse pain," she said. "It's the pain of being thrown away." Raiden connected the wires. "All right then, warrior, let's bring your fire back." As the med core synced with her brace, Zarena's body jerked slightly. The power flowed into her spine, tickling at first, then burning. She cried out, but didn't stop. Her back arched, teeth gritted. Raiden stayed close. "You're doing great. Hold on. Almost there." Suddenly, her left leg twitched out, then again. Zarena gasped. "I felt that," Raiden grinned. "Then you're not just healing. You're winning." Just then, his wrist communicator beeped. Raiden checked the signal. His smile disappeared. "What is it?" Zarena asked. He turned the screen toward her. 3 ships. "Incoming, not junkyard bots. Not scavengers, her family. They're coming back again," Raiden said, voice hard. "But this time, it's not a search. It's a hunt." Zarena's face changed. She didn't look afraid. She looked ready. "We can run," Raiden offered. "Hide again." Zarena slowly sat up, still shaky but upright. "No more running," she said. "They need to see who I've become." Raiden helped her stand. She leaned on his arm, sweat on her brow, but standing. He looked at her and nodded. "Then we stand together." The sky above the scrapyard turned dark as 3 alien dropships descended. Powerful engines roared. Lights cut through the ash clouds. Soldiers in full armor marched out, scanning with rifles and drones. Raiden and Zarena stood at the edge of the open ship shell, weapons ready. Zarena's voice rang out through a speaker system, strong, clear. "You came to erase your mistake." The soldiers froze. She stepped forward, legs still weak, but moving with fire in her eyes. "I'm not your shame anymore. I'm your warning." The ground trembled, not because of fear, but because a forgotten woman was finally standing. Zarena stood tall, her body still aching, her legs trembling, but her eyes blazing with fire. Across the ruined scrapyard, her own people stared in. Disbelief, their rifles lowered, their helmets tilted. She'd been thrown into the junkyard like garbage. But now she stood alive, defiant, and unbroken. Beside her, Raiden raised his blaster, but didn't aim it. "This is your moment," he said softly. "I'm just here to back you up." Zarena nodded, stepping forward. Every step was hard. Every step was a victory. The leader of the soldiers, her brother, stepped out of the lead ship. His armor was shining, his face cold. "Zarena," he said sharply. "You should be ashes," she smiled. "You always hoped I would be. You dishonor the bloodline. A broken warrior has no place in our ranks." She pointed at her spine. "This brace was dead. A human fixed it. Not you, not our clan." "He did." Her brother's eyes narrowed at Raiden. "A scavenger?" Zarena's voice was steady. He treated me better than my blood ever did. Raiden stepped beside her now. Calm, solid. She's not broken, he said. She was never the problem. You were. The soldiers raised their weapons, but they didn't fire, because something had changed. They saw the strength in Zarina's posture. They saw the man standing beside her, not as her captor, but her protector, and they hesitated that her brother growled. You were given to the junk, yet you returned. Why? Zarina looked at the rusted field around her. I came back to show you. I'm not trash. I was treasure. You just couldn't see it. Raiden leaned toward her. You sure you want to let them leave? Zarina's answer was calm, but sharp. No, but I don't want revenge. She turned to her brother. You're not worth it. She raised her voice to the soldiers. If you follow him, you follow a coward who fears imperfection. If you follow me, you follow someone who fought death with half a body and still stood. Up there was silence. Then one soldier lowered his rifle. Another stepped back from formation. Her brother's face twisted in rage. You'll regret this, sister. No, she said, smiling now. You will. Suddenly, a sound rang from the side. A signal. A ping. Raiden checked his wrist console. A ship, a real one, had picked up their distress beacon, human vessel. En route. He turned to Zarina. You ready to leave this place? She looked at the dark skies, the rusted bones of old machines, and the people who once abandoned her. Yes, she said. Let the junk keep those who belong to it. As the human ship descended, dust and light filled the air. Zarina leaned on Raiden's arm. Each step up the ramp feeling like a step out of the grave. At the top, she turned for one last look at the Junkyard. Where she was left to rot, where she almost died, where she found a man with a heart bigger than any machine. Inside the ship, Raiden guided her to a seat. She took his hand. Why didn't you leave me? She asked again. Raiden looked at her. You weren't trash, he said. You were just waiting to be found. She blinked, fighting tears. You didn't just save my life, she whispered. You saved the part of me they tried to kill. He squeezed her hand. Then let's start a life no one can throw away. As the ship lifted from the ground, the Junkyard grew smaller behind them, just a distant shadow. But two souls inside the ship were finally free, one who was broken, one who refused to give up, and both stronger together.